we want to discuss the issue of leadership. I want to start by saying that everybody is a leader. Some people think they are not leaders, but it's because they don't understand the definition of leadership. A leader is somebody who leads. Somebody who leads is the one who goes ahead when others are following. There's hardly anybody who doesn't have someone who follows them. For example, all you are is you are another brother or another sister. People get to know how school is from you because you went to school before them. You are their leader. Anybody who goes ahead and others follow is a leader. Or your parents, your children learn things from you. So you are a leader because they are following. Because the critical thing about leadership is that there is a followership. You cannot be called a leader when there is nobody following. Managers are not necessarily leaders because they manage an activity, they manage some people, but those are not followers, they are subordinates. And maybe one of these days we need to discuss and differentiate the difference between a manager and a leader. So when you talk about leaders, we are simply talking about people who have a following, where people follow. And I want to take biblical leaders and try to study them. And we start with one of the greatest leaders in the Bible, who is Moses. So we are discussing leadership, Moses style. And I'm hoping you, as a father, as a mother, as a brother, as a supervisor, as a manager who wants to be a leader, you learn something out of the life of Moses. You know, when you are called a leader, you set direction. Moses set direction for the people going to Canaan. When you are called a leader, you are the kind of a person people admire and follow. The two critical things about leaders is that nobody will follow you. Number one, if they don't admire you. You cannot admire somebody. You cannot fail to admire somebody, then you follow them. Remember, following is a voluntary activity. So if they don't admire you, they'll just stop following you. Managers are different. Subordinates have to, if they want their salary, they have to do what you are telling them. Leaders are different. The people will only follow you if they can admire you. So a leader is a leader because of his being. He's admired, the way he does things. The second thing is, he is trusted. Because where he is going, these people have never been there. They are moving from an area of comfort to another area of insecurity. They are not sure. How do they go there if they think you are an enemy? And your enemy can never be your leader because you'll avoid, you will not trust him. And trust is the currency of leadership and to be very important. So followers could follow anybody whom, number one, they admire, number two, they actually trust. And Moses was exactly like that. The way he carried out things was admirable. And his people trusted him. When he said, let me go this way, they trusted. So I want to see a few of the characteristics of Moses as a leader and how we can copy them. The first one I want to look at is the initial one we see where he meets God in a burning bush. And it's in Exodus chapter 3 verse 11 we read, but Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? The one critical trait of a good leader that was in Moses is he understands himself and accepts his weaknesses. You know, many people try to imagine they are strong in areas and others watch them and just laugh. People will not follow you once they know that's not you. You're not reading out of your area of strength. So why don't you get to know it? When you know it, something happens. Because he knew his weakness, God gave him Aaron. Because of saying, you know, I am not good at this. I am not good at talking. God gave him his older brother called Aaron. And all leaders today need to learn from Moses. Please understand, you are not perfect. Only God is perfect. You have many strengths, but you have many weaknesses. So your followers could fill in your area of weakness. But you have to admit it first. Admitting your weaknesses does not show you as a bad leader. It shows you as an honest leader. And because of you admitting your weakness, it makes people trust you and they can actually now want to walk with you. So that's the first thing I want to say for any one of us, whoever has to lead. And I've said all of us are leaders of one sort or another. Number two is he leads from a calling. Leaders are people who, what they are doing is something they feel called to do. In Exodus chapter 3 verse 10, we read, "So now, go, I'm sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." It is not just his thinking. He was able to see God as the one sending him. If you set yourself somewhere, when things become difficult along the route, you can give up easily. But if I have sent you, you will have to clear with me before you can give up. And calling, and maybe we can discuss a big subject. Calling is a very critical thing. Please don't lead in areas outside your calling. When you operate within your calling, you have a deep conviction, which gives you the ability to face challenges and go through them, or over them, or under them, but not give up. And number two, when you operate within your calling, you have a sense that the caller is with you. You have a conviction you are not alone, that he that called you will give you the blessing, the energy, the strength in order for you to achieve what needs to be achieved. And that's what helped Moses. He had such a difficult group to carry. And by the way, they were not few. 1 million people moving from Egypt to Canaan, even today, would be an impossible task if you asked to take 1 million people across the desert. And he had real many difficulties. What kept him? The sense of calling. He knew who called him, and he knew what the task he was given to do was. And he knew the difficult people he had to lead. And that's a very critical thing. So the same way, if you are going to be a leader, it will be important to ask, is what I'm doing something that pleases the caller? Am I really operating within my area of calling? Thirdly, he leads conscious of the caller's presence, God's presence with him. Exodus 3 verse 12 says, "And God said, I'll be with you, and this will be the sign to you that it is I who has sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain." The same thing is repeated in Hebrews chapter 11, where we are now learning about Moses as a hero of faith. We are told about Moses. By faith, he left Egypt, not fearing the king's anger. He persevered because he saw him who is invisible. And I can tell you, many of us leaders give up because of our followers are difficult, they embarrass us, they insult us, there are challenges, there are barriers. We give up easily because we are leaders who do not practice God's presence. We are not conscious about him being with us on a daily basis. My friend, when you sense God's presence with you, you can be in the middle of trouble, there can be somebody aiming a gun at you, and you know very well with God's presence, the only way that bullet can enter you is if God allows it. You know that God is the one who has said we are the apple of his eye to the Israelites. We are the apple of his eye. Now, if you're talking about the apple of your eye, there's no way somebody can put a finger in your eye without you knowing. So if we are the apple of God's eye, we need to be assured he is with us, whatever circumstance. And good leaders, if they lead like Moses, they must be conscious, not sometimes, but all the time, conscious of God's presence with them. You know, by faith, Moses left Egypt. By faith, Moses did not fear the Pharaoh. By faith, he persevered because he saw him who is invisible. Do you walk by faith or you walk by sight? If you walk by faith, it means the circumstances around you, the insults from your followers can be there. But once you realize you're on God's side, you're always on the winning side, you will be able to carry out, however challenging your leadership journey is, you will be able to persevere. The word here being used by the writer of the book of Hebrews is he persevered. It was not an easy leadership role. He persevered because he could see him whom the Israelites were not seeing. God's presence was with him. And I think that was very important. Next, he led under God's authority. He was conscious, not just of God's presence, but God's authority. Exodus chapter 3 verse 13, Moses said to God, suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you. And they ask me, what is his name? Then what shall I tell them? Moses was very clear. He needed clear authority from God. So I'm not doing this on my own. I'm doing it because God. And he kept telling the Israelites, the God of our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has told us. The God of our fathers is going with us. The God of our fathers will deal with Pharaoh. You need to be aware about not just God's presence, but has he asked you to do what you are doing? Do you sense God's authority in whatever you are doing? Next, he operated under God's gifts. He had to be aware of the gifting from God. Exodus chapter 4 verse 2 says, then the Lord said to him, what is that in your hand? A staff, he replied. And you know the staff, the great staff, maybe not like Vimbo Anyayo, but you need to understand the thing. He had just an ordinary shepherd's rod. But when he is asked, what do you have? He was told that rod that is with you is going to be what I will use. And when he went to Pharaoh, he actually put it down and became a snake. The astrologers of Egypt tried to do the same. Their stakes that became snakes were swallowed by Moses' snake. Now, what he is saying is you need to always assess yourself. What are God's gifts in you? Because those are the same gifts he wants you to use. Of course, earlier he had told us about his weakness. Now he needed to know his strength. And God showed him his strength was obvious. That God's presence, even the very thing that he had, is something that he would use. So I think you need to understand God's gifting. That's why we normally do a SWOT analysis on our organizations. Every leader should do a SWOT analysis on themselves, asking themselves, what strengths has God given me? What weaknesses do I really have as a leader? Number two, how will those strengths help me to go where God has sent me, with my followers? How will my weaknesses stop me from going where God has sent me? How can I manage those weaknesses? Next, what are the threats to arriving there? What are the external threats? What are they challenging? Now, not from my followers, not from myself, but outside us. What are the challenges that could stop us going where we are going? And finally, what are the external opportunities that will assist us on our journey to wherever this team is going? So, a good leader has done a SWOT analysis on his team and on himself, so that as he goes, he knows what strategies to use that utilizes his strength, that manages his weaknesses, but that also at the same time is able to deal with his threats and utilize the opportunities or make good use of the opportunities. I think that leads us to the next point. Moses was a team player. He was not just a lone ranger. He was a team player. And of course, he is shown that a little later by his father Jethro, but the importance of working as a team. Exodus chapter 4 verse 14 says, then the Lord's anger burned against Moses, and he said, what about your brother Aaron, the Levite? I know he can speak well. He is already on his way to meet you, and he will be glad to see you. Wow. Moses is feeling lonely, alone, with weaknesses. He's told, you are not working alone. You are working as a team. And already I'm sending your brother Aaron to come. And he's a good speaker, which is an area of weakness. So you are going to be the leader, but you don't lead alone. You need other people's help. Have you seen a church where the pastor is the one who calls the meeting to order, leads the first song, leads the choruses, is the one who organizes the offerings, he's the one who preaches, and he's the one who gives benediction. And the church has 1,000 members, but nobody is involved in that program. That's not a good team player. A team player coordinates, but does not replace everybody. There are complementary roles by the followers that help him. He is like a chairman of a meeting. Everybody talks, the decisions are made, but the truth of the matter is, it's not the decision of the chairman, it's the decision of the team. But as the main coordinator, he's the one who announces the decision. That's really what we are talking about. And that's a very important thing in team playing. If you think that you are the best person and that your followers have no strength, you will not be a team player. So Moses was shown by God that there is something in Aaron that is better than what he has. And so they need to work together. So all great leaders are team players, because lone rangers never go very far. Have you heard of the saying, if you want to go very quickly, go alone. But if you really want impact, go as a team. If you want to go very far, go with a team. And so it's important to understand good leaders don't just tell people to follow. They work with them and go with them so that their area of weaknesses can be filled in by the strength of some of the followers. Next, a good leader has family support. He doesn't just work on his own. He gets information to be known by his family so that they can work together. And it's important to see that Moses seems to have talked with his wife, who was a foreigner, but he knew things about the God of Israel. Let's look at Exodus chapter 4, verse 24 to 26. At a lodging place on the way, the Lord met Moses and was about to kill him. Wow! But Zipporah, verse 25, took a flint knife, cut off the son's foreskin, and touched Moses' feet with it. Surely you are a bridegroom of blood to me, she said. So the Lord left him alone. At that time, she said, blood of blood, referring to circumcision. So it means the family was with him. Even as they are working together, the family is with him. So they understand. And at a time when he got sick and had failed to do things that were required of every Israeli child, it is the wife who assisted. Certainly, it's not the work of women to circumcise boys. But in a crisis, she knew enough of what to do. Let me ask you as a leader, do you work with your family or do you work alone? Do you share what you are doing with them? Do they understand what it is you are involved in? Moses got help and did not die because the family was with him. Next, a good leader is a consultant, somebody who consults others. And those others do not necessarily have to be in your team. You can look for information outside your team. Consult. Exodus 18:24, Moses listened to his father-in-law and did everything he said. This is not an Israelite. This is an outsider, but an older man, a wise man. And he comes and watches the way Moses is working and gives him advice. He is willing to listen. Notice, the only one he could receive instructions from was God. The work of Jethro was not to instruct him, was to advise him. Then Moses took the advice, analyzed it against what God had said, and he knew what to take and what not to take. Are you a person who is a lone ranger, who can never, you want to get glory at the end and say, I am a self-made man? There doesn't exist any. Nobody is self-made. God uses others to make you. And it will be important as a leader to look for information wherever it can be found. It doesn't mean you follow it. It means you analyze it and decide what to take and what not to take. A good leader will always consult others. But that brings us to the next. A good leader delegates. That's one of the weaknesses Moses had at the beginning. He felt because God is the one who talked to him, nobody else was going to get involved. So his father Jethro comes and watches him, and he's certainly going to get a burnout. That's what we call it these days. And it is Jethro God uses to save Moses from a burnout. Are there things you are doing others could do? No, maybe not just as well as you, but they could do. Why are you not involving them? Maybe you are a preacher. I agree. But the question is, are there people in the congregation who are also preachers? And because they are preachers like you, it means that if you give them time, they can improve. You allow them to preach, and because they are not wasting people's time they have heard from God, it's only telling them, don't shout, go like this, and improve them. Now, delegation is a very important thing. If you hear people have made big successes, it's because they knew how to delegate. And delegation is not abdication. Abdication is, you do that. Delegation is, what are you able to do? Can you assist me in this? The way to do it is like this, like this. Go and try, but come back to me whenever you have a problem. So you work together until the person is confident enough to actually assist you. And that will be important. Next, a person who is going to be a great leader is desperate for God's help. He doesn't just ask to God, but he's desperate. He feels like, I can't go on unless I'm sure of God's presence and God's help. Exodus 33:15 says, then Moses said to him, if your presence does not go with us, do not send us from here. In other words, Moses was so clear that you cannot be a success on any teamwork if God's presence is not with you. Are you desperate, or do you feel like, here God doesn't need to come in? Why bother God with a lost pen? Now, it's important to understand, if you really are going to be a good leader, you need God's presence in every detail of the project. Next, a good leader is an intercessor. He intercedes for his team. He doesn't just pray for him, doesn't just talk to God, but he is able to see the problems of the team and take those problems to God. He's an intercessor. Exodus 32 verse 11 says, but Moses sought the favor of the Lord his God. Lord, he said, why should your anger burn against your people whom you brought out of Egypt with great power and mighty hand? Why would the Egyptians say it was with evil intent that he brought them out to kill them in the mountains and to wipe them off from the face of the earth? Turn from your fierce anger, relent and do not bring disaster on your people. Remember your servants, Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, to whom you sought by your own self. I will make you descendants numerous as the stars in the sky, and I will give you a descendants all this land I promised them, and it will be their inheritance forever. Then the Lord relented and did not bring on his people the disaster he had threatened. That is called intercession. Do you just condemn the people who work with you, or do you talk to God about them so that God can intervene? Then the same thing in Exodus 32 verse 31. So Moses went back to the Lord and said, oh, what a great sin these people have committed. They have made themselves gods of gold. But now please forgive their sin. But if not, then blot me out of the book you have written. Wow. He's not just an intercessor. He is willing to damage himself for the sake. He's saying, if they have so bad, you save them, kill me. Do you feel like your people are with you? When people are talking against your team, do you join them and say, yeah, I have a useless team? Or do you defend your team? What kind of a leader are you? Can you sacrifice? But now please forgive their sins. But if not, then blot my name out of the book. Isn't that, in other words, I would sacrifice my going to Canaan for their sake. Is that what you do? Do you sacrifice yourself for the sake of the team so the project can be accomplished? But he was also a conflict solver. And you need to understand, if you are going to be a kind of a good leader, you must learn how to deal with the conflict. There's no team made of humans that doesn't have conflict. You must be good at dealing with conflict. Numbers chapter 12 is about Miriam and Aaron, the siblings of Moses, totally unhappy with the leadership of their brother. Miriam and Aaron began to talk against Moses because of his Cushite wife, for he had married a Cushite. Has the Lord spoken only through Moses? They asked. Hasn't he also spoken through me, through us? And the Lord heard it. Now Moses was a very humble man, more humble than anyone else on the face of the earth. Do not let her be like a stillborn. Verse 12 goes on to say, Moses has seen the trouble that the sister has gotten into, leprous. Don't let her be like an infant coming from his mother's womb with its flesh half eaten away. So he prays for her. Moses cried out to the Lord, please God, heal her. And God healed her. Here is a conflict where people do not recognize your leadership. Moses was so humble that he gave the matter to God instead of quarreling. Do you burn with anger when people challenge your leadership? Or do you, with a cool mind, take the matter to God and talk to them and look for a solution? You know, Moses had to account for his own mistakes. In Numbers number 20, but the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, because you did not trust in me enough to honor me as holy in the sight of the Israelites, you will not bring this community the land I give them. These were the waters of Meribah, where Israelites quarreled with the Lord, and where he was proved holy among them. So, please understand, your own mistakes will not be taken by your team. You are going to suffer them. And as we finish, Moses prepared a successor. If you died now, will the project fail because of you? Or have you been working with others such that even if you got sick or you are unable, you'd continue? Just listen to Deuteronomy chapter 1 verse 38. But your assistant Joshua, son of Nun, will enter it. Encourage him, because you will lead Israel to inherit it. That's what happened. Moses had to move out of the way. But because he had worked on his assistant, the Israelites were able to get the land of Canaan. I finish by asking you, please avoid groupthink. Learn how to listen to people, but do not get to where you are so united, nobody can question you. You know Exodus 32 verse 19, when Moses approached the camp and saw the calf and the dancing, his anger burned, and he threw the tablets out of his hands, breaking them to pieces at the foot of the mountain. Then verse 20, and he took the calf the people had made and burned it in the fire. Here is my friend Aaron suffering from groupthink. Say, that guy, is he coming back? I don't think we have. No. Why? That God has swallowed him up. Then they quickly all agreed, nobody remembering God's commands. And in the process, they ended up ruining themselves. Now, do you ever end up with that, where you don't question anything, or you yourself are never questioned? So the whole team is going headlong to destruction. That's the problem of groupthink. Please keep encouraging people to question you, rather than agree with you on everything. So, as we finish, we are dealing with the story of Moses. Can you see what a great leader he is? What was he called to do? To get a group of 1 million people from a land of Egypt to the land of Canaan. Number 2, to get them out of slavery and a superpower that held them. Did he succeed? Yes. Did he make mistakes along the way? Yes. Did he learn from the mistakes? Yes. The children of Israel finally arrived? Yes. May that be the state about you as you finish leading your people.